Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Minister's Facebook Live session. The government is for us to have dialogue regarding the direction of the Ministry of Labor, and we also want to answer your questions or concerns regarding the direction. As we transition from a healthcare crisis into an economic crisis, it is important for us to be on the same page. It is important for us to understand the direction of the Ministry of Labor. The Ministry of Labor will play an extremely important role as we begin to rebuild our economy. The overall arching aim of the Ministry of Labor is the expansion of jobs in this economy. We want to see economic growth, and the Ministry of Labor will work hard to ensure that we facilitate that growth and also provide jobs. Ensure that Bermudians are adequately trained for the current and future jobs, but also ensure that we put the measures in place to allow businesses to flourish in our society. Many would know that this economic crisis has caused us to rethink the way we'll move forward. We're entering into a new normal. We're not talking about business sustainability right now. We're actually talking about business survival for a lot of businesses. And so with the departments underneath the Ministry of Labor, they include workforce development, the labor relations section, they include immigration, and they also include financial assistance. All departments that will be critical in providing support for our people moving forward. And so I invite you to ask your questions. Please leave your questions in the comment area, and I'll try my best tonight to answer each and every one of your questions. For those questions that I'm unable to answer or provide an immediate answer to, I will endeavor to get you those answers. The Ministry of Labor, as I said, consists of three main departments. Number one is immigration. Number two is the Department of Workforce Development. Three, financial assistance. And then we have the labor relations section. Under the labor relations section, the team has put all its resources right now into reforming the labor legislation. What we're actually doing is consolidating the Trade Union Act, the Labor Relations Act, and Labor Disputes Act into one act. We're also making changes to the Employment Act, which provide additional protection to employees, in addition to that, ensuring that all acts answer to one tribunal. And so that's the main aim of the reform. These reforms have been long awaiting for many years, and I'm glad we're in a position now that we can progress the amendments to these critical pieces of legislation so that our industrial relations climate is actually harmonized. Under workforce development, many would know that I was the previous chair of the National Workforce Development Board, also known as the National Training Board. I actually chaired the committee in terms of developing Bermuda's first National Workforce Development Plan. And so workforce development will be actively moving through the stages of that particular plan, which actually strengthens our workforce development system. Since moving into the ministerial role, it left a void in terms of the chair for the National Training Board, and I will be appointing a chair for the National Training Board in short order so that it can drive the strategic direction of the Department of Workforce Development and the future of our workforce development system in the country. In addition to that, the workforce development has to respond to the unemployment crisis that we find on our hands. And so they were the department that was responsible for facilitating the unemployment benefit. In addition to that, they will be the department that is responsible for the strategic plan that we would have in place to ensure that our persons re-enter the workforce. What we didn't anticipate from this COVID crisis was the number of individuals that will remain unemployed. And so we need a strategy in terms of how we get those persons, those able-bodied persons, back to work. And that will be the responsibility of the Department of Workforce Development in the short run, but in the long run is ensuring that we have our people trained and have the skill sets so that they're able to take on opportunities for the current and future world of work. Under financial assistance, we are also engaging in reform. As you know, the longer that persons remain unemployed, the greater their dependency is going to be on some sort of what we call social protection or social safety net. In terms of financial assistance, what we don't want is people to get in positions of poverty before they actually get the assistance they need. And so it's important for us to provide social safety nets so that we can provide intervention to people in a time in their life when they actually need it. We anticipate an increased demand for the services of financial assistance, and we're preparing the department to be more agile. We're preparing the social workers so that they can focus on social work and not the administration of benefits moving forward. As you know, we also have an aging population, and that aging population would also require social assistance. And so the Department of Financial Assistance, the reform that we're aiming to do, we're aiming to complete those reform initiatives by the end of this legislative session so that we're fully prepared for the additional volume and the services that people may require. In terms of immigration, at this point in time, we are working on a reformed work permit policy. We need to ensure that the work permit policy works in the best interests of the country. It's not lost on me that the law that governs us is the Immigration and Protection Act. And it's named the Immigration and Protection Act because it has to always ensure that while it serves as an economic lever for growth and opportunity, it also has to serve to protect the best interests of Bermudians. And so we are operating under old work permit policy. The current chairman of the Immigration Board, MP Renee will lead the initiative in terms of that reform. And then we also have the Bipartisan Joint Immigration Reform Committee working on other immigration matters that fall under the scope of comprehensive immigration reform to deal with PRCs. We are focused on process improvement in the Department of Immigration. What we want to do is reduce the process time for applications and create efficiencies in the department so that we can better serve our customer base. And our customer base is both Bermudians and our business community. I would say that Bermuda First has put forward recommendations for improvements to our immigration policy. I think anything that has to do with immigration should be measured. As a result, we would have further conversations in terms of piloting a program to see if we can create the efficiencies that businesses are looking for without hindering the opportunities that Bermudians require to progress through international business and the business community. So the overarching vision of the Ministry of Labor is the expansion of jobs. Now that workforce development and immigration is under the same ministry, we're able to better assess where the demand for jobs are. We better assess our training needs so that we're less reliant on the demand of guest workers, and we can get our local population into jobs and taking advantage of opportunities that exist. Thank you. We'll now move to answering some of the questions that individuals may have.
Thank you. Good evening, Minister. Just want to remind those watching this live broadcast on Facebook to feel free to make any comments that you may want for questions answered, and we will try our best to address those as we proceed. So we did get quite a number of questions. So I just start from the top, Minister.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so why no clampdown on outsourcing? Lots of jobs Bermudians could do, and lots of payroll tax for government.
Certainly, from the Ministry of Labor's perspective, we want the jobs in Bermuda. And so it's in our best interest that companies don't outsource. We will encourage companies to retain jobs in Bermuda as much as possible. Clamping down is difficult. We can't have a heavy hand or regulation in terms of persons and their business operations. But what we can certainly do is encourage businesses to retain employment levels in Bermuda. In addition to that, what we will do is have direct conversation with industry in terms of what some of their needs may be and how we can, facilitate those jobs remaining in Bermuda.
Okay. What is the current policy regarding layoffs, as my employer has not reopened, and next month will be 4 months that I have been laid off?
And so, under the Employment Act, after 4 months, a person is either supposed to be recalled back to work or terminated, which would trigger redundancy. Understanding that COVID provided a very special situation, what the government actually done was exclude the shelter-in-place period from the calculation. And so what that did was it allowed employers to get back on their feet before the automatic termination was actually triggered. That actually protected jobs, and it also allowed businesses to move from what I'll consider to be survival mode, so that in the event they had to pay redundancy, they had the funds to do so.
Okay, I have a live question here.
Mm-hmm.
Let me just, so this person is a guest worker
Mm-hmm.
for 3 years. 1st of March, I am unemployed. I don't have a job. That's why I can't apply for unemployment benefits. Now I have to go back home. Me and my family back home are suffering financially. Please, sir, do your best for me. I go a lot of places, nobody helped me. Please, sir, I need your help very badly. So what can you advise this person?
And so if that person is a work permit holder and the work permit has now expired, and the work permit has now expired, what we actually encourage that person to do is write into the Department of Immigration for permission to reside and seek. But it should be lost on nobody that we now have thousands of Bermudians out of work, and encouraging additional competition for job opportunities in this climate is not in the best interest of the Bermudian population. And so while every application is handled on its own merit, we have to ensure that we protect the interests of the Bermudian employees.
Okay. Another question. My employer has recalled me to work, but I am unable to return as I have a small child or children at home that has not returned to nursery. What is the time frame between being called back to work and physically returning to work? And can my employer terminate me if I do not return immediately?
So there's no particular time frame for an individual to return back to work under law. But then there's also no provision that would allow that person to not return back to work. And so what we ask in those cases is that individuals work with their employers. Many employers are very understanding based on the current circumstances we're in. But what we can continue to do is allow persons not to re-enter the workforce. And so as much as possible, we've opened up daycares. And things of that nature so that persons can have the support to watch their child while they return back to work. And it's important for us to get Bermudians back into the workplace, because what we don't want to see happen is that person being terminated.
Okay. Next question is, when will the mixed status and repatriation bill be finalized and individuals given the opportunity to apply?
Okay, so that bill was passed. It's not operationalized yet, but by mid-August, we aim to operationalize and begin to accept applications. What we're trying to do is we're trying to ensure that the process is electronic, and so that the applications can be processed in a reasonable time frame. And so before we begin to accept a lot of paper applications, what we're trying to do is make the system electronic so that we can speed up the adjudication time.
Okay. I think this may have been answered by what you just said, but this person said that they submitted their permit before the pandemic, and they want to know what is the normal time they should expect for a reply.
And so work permits can be processed fairly quickly. The problem with that is that we had a backlog when the Department of Immigration was not operationalized during the shelter-in-place period. And so persons can expect a normal turnaround period moving forward as we've cleared the majority of the backlog that existed.
Okay. This person is asking, is there still an immigration board that reviews and approves or denies work permits?
Correct. The immigration board still exists. What the scope and role of the immigration board will be expanded beyond just approving permits to also policy development and formation.
Okay. So this person just has a comment that definitely I think maybe many people are thinking about.
Mm-hmm.
So more businesses, they say, will leave Bermuda as there are not enough qualified Bermudians. How can we address this?
Where there is not qualified Bermudians, certainly persons apply for work permits, and the work permits are processed and granted based on their merit. And so we recognize that we need guest workers in Bermuda based on the shortage of Bermudian labor. And I see no merit in that question in terms of businesses will leave because of the labor when we have policies in place that allow businesses to work permits.
Okay. Can my employer force me to use my vacation or sick leave?
Simple answer is no. And if a person does have concern where they're being forced to use benefits, they should contact the Labor Relations Department.
And do you have a number for the labor relations or contact information?
So the tip line is actually 296-5202.
Okay. If I am made redundant, what am I entitled to?
It all depends. In the Employment Act, it clearly specifies what the payout should be based on your years of service. If you are governed by a collective bargaining agreement, then you will find that if you're governed by a collective bargaining agreement, then your calculation should be featured in your collective bargaining agreement.
Okay. This person is asking, are Seek and Reside permits being granted at the moment?
Each application is handled on its own merit. In particular circumstances, people may be allowed to seek and reside. I'm less inclined to allow people to seek and reside when there are thousands of Bermudians out of work. And there's individuals, if they're directly going to compete with Bermudians for job opportunities, this is certainly not a time where the minister is inclined to have across-the-board approvals.
Okay. Can someone be forced to take a COVID-19 test before returning to work?
No, they cannot.
Okay. My employer has recalled other persons to work that do not have the length of seniority that I have. Is this fair?
If you're governed by a collective bargaining agreement, then they should have a seniority clause. If you're not governed by a collective agreement, unfortunately, seniority does not prevail. Is it fair? Probably not. No, it's not fair. And we've had a number of issues in regards to inequity between those that are being recalled to work and those that are not being placed back in the workforce. In addition to that, we have had some concerns from employers where some people are choosing to stay home and receive a benefit instead of returning back to work.
Okay. Just think there's persons that are submitting questions live on Facebook here. Again, feel free to ask questions and we'll do our best to address them. So next one, what will be the ministry's role as we move into phase 4 and into the future?
Well, the immediate role would be to try to facilitate an environment where many of our workers can get back to work. We'd have thought by, as we enter in phase 4, that more persons had been returned to the workplace. But what we now see is a greater level of redundancies taking place in our economy. And that is pause for cause. And so the workforce development will have to come up with a strategy in terms of how we get persons reemployed. And then we also need to ensure that we have mechanisms in place that ensure people are housed and fed. And so what we don't want is people going starving in Bermuda, and part of my responsibility under the Department of FA is to ensure that people have access to the benefits when they require those benefits.
Okay, this person is saying that they're an expat, a healthcare worker, and classified by the government an essential worker. I have been unemployed since February, and I have been advised by the Chief Immigration Officer that I will not be allowed to even reside and seek employment. I have multiple employers that are interested in hiring me, but I am being forced to leave the island to interview. If successful, I would then have to turn back around and come back to Bermuda. There are no Bermudians to fill my skill sets as it is highly specialized. Would my case be considered for eligibility to seek and reside?
And so this is not the forum where we speak to specific cases, but that person can write into the immigration department with their specific matter, and we'll handle that matter appropriately.
Okay. Is there a list of jobs or job titles that have been ring-fenced and held specifically for Bermudians? Has this list been expanded due to the pandemic?
And so there is a restricted category within the work permit policy. The category has not been expanded, but what we do know that for certain occupational categories, there are a large number of Bermudians who are now out of work, and as a result, we're more inclined to ask employers to re-advertise those positions to take into consideration our current climate, so that Bermudians have an opportunity to apply for those vacant posts before we bring in guest workers.
Okay. Does immigration allow a status person sponsor another foreigner to get status? If so, why?
No, I don't think that that's a current process within the immigration's remit.
Okay. All right, next question. Has the impact to employment by this pandemic provided the ministry with an opportunity to evaluate the services it offers and possibly do away with some of these or even enhance some currently offered?
I don't think it's providing us with an opportunity to do away with any services. It's caused us to reevaluate and recognize that our services are in need more than ever. Job placement services, preparing people for work, the role of FA, holidays, I believe those services are needed more than ever. It's more than ever we need social workers that's able to assist our population in terms of even managing their lives through this particular crisis. And so there is a human factor to this economic crisis, and many Bermudians are finding themselves in a position that they've never been in before. And right now is not the time for contraction of services. Right now is the time that we actually put all our resources in place so that we soften the blow that some of our members of our population are actually feeling. And so what we see is The unemployment and benefit was originally for a 12-week period. We were able to provide an argument so it gets extended to a 16-week period. But after that 16 period, 16 weeks runs out, the Ministry of Finance has infinite funds. And so we have real consideration, we have real decisions, hard decisions to make in terms of what moving forward. And I is not prepared to accept that Bermudians have to go without. And so I'll do whatever I can and use whatever services are underneath my ministry to ensure that the Bermudians get the resources that they need.
And the next question, which you just touched on, and there may be others as well, but what are the main challenges that you see going forward?
The main challenge is our unemployment situation. I don't think that we would have been able to predict the high level of unemployment. If you look and see that there are currently still over 6,000 people unemployed on the unemployment benefit, in addition to close to 3,000 people that were previously unemployed, we're now talking about 9,000 people who is in our society that's unemployed. And if you were able to watch the Black Lives Matter march, I saw it from one vantage point, and people came across me for 16 minutes in terms of from the vantage point I saw. And that was estimated to be 7,000 people. So now if we're talking about 9,000 people, it is a real stark reality. It's more people than actually attend a cup match game at any point in time. And so when you put it in that context, it says that we have real challenges on our hands. There are people that will need additional services, and we need to prepare ourselves as a government to ensure that no one is left behind. But it will be difficult, and unless we have economic growth, which creates job growth in our economy, this problem will be with us for some time.
Okay. So this person is saying that, granted, we're doing a great job at trying to get people back to work. Mm-hmm. But another thing is, will anything be done to get these people to work that were unemployed even before the pandemic?
Correct. So nobody will be excluded from our reemployment strategy. And so when we roll out initiatives for services to assist those that's unemployed, they will go to all persons who are unemployed, whether you're unemployed based on COVID or COVID.
Okay. What is being done to encourage businesses to train and promote Bermudians?
And so we've had active conversation with the business community. I've met with what they call it, the alphabet soup. I've met with the chamber, and every single time I have that platform, I use it to try to form some type of partnership with industry that would allow for the facilitation of learning and development. We need to see increased internship, increased apprenticeship programs, and we need more on-the-job training. The current process of just bringing in labor when we don't have skilled and qualified Bermudians has to change. And so a large portion of what we're trying to do at workforce development and the reform that we're actually doing is treating employers as partners. For no longer can employers be left out of the workforce development system. Employers know the jobs, the current jobs, and they know the future jobs. They know the skill sets that they require within their industries. And as moving forward, the Workforce Development Board will be heavily weighted towards employer involvement more than it actually is now, so that they can feel as genuine partners in this system.
Thank you again, everyone, for submitting your questions. Please continue to do so. Next one. My husband's position was made redundant, but he has not been working for 2 years yet, so he cannot seek employment without a seek and reside permit. He works in IT. We need to make a quick decision about leaving due to getting our children settled back home before school starts, but we would rather stay here as we have family in Bermuda. Does the minister have any advice for us due to us having to make a quick decision and may not be able to wait many weeks for an answer from immigration?
These are the difficult conversations that I have to have in this role. We have expatriate employees or guest workers who are being made redundant, and equally we have Bermudians that are being made redundant. And we have to strike a balance somewhere. But we have to service both populations, and it's hard when somebody's being made redundant, whether they're a guest worker or Bermudian. But at the end of the day, some decisions that guest workers have, Bermudians don't have. Bermudians don't have a decision whether or not they can go somewhere else and seek employment. And so it's going to be difficult moving forward. There are many persons who are unemployed. We simply can't have guest workers filling jobs that Bermudians possess, or removing Bermudians from opportunities when we have large volumes of Bermudians unemployed. And so, like I said, if they put in an application, we will look at the application on its merit. But moving forward, us as a country, we have to come to some understanding that things that were given in the past will not is not. It's not going to be the same moving forward. And I prefer to have a Bermuda that has the majority of Bermudians working rather than on some form of unemployment benefit.
Okay, this person is, they say that I'm a Bermudian who is married to a non-Bermudian. We have a son together that is Bermudian. Mm-hmm. He has applied for a contract to stay on the island to help support us. Should I be worried that he will not be signed because I depend on him to support our child?
So my email address is jphayward@gov.bm. For those particular queries, I'll ask that person to email me directly rather than us having that conversation over Facebook.
Okay. And moment, that same email address, I'll post it to our Facebook page, so those that want to can get that information and definitely reach out to you for this. Let's see. So what are the rules, processes for people who were laid off, received, say, 2 weeks of benefits, then called back to work, but were subsequently laid off again?
That's abuse of the legislation by employer. Nobody should be laid off for a few months and then recalled back to work for 2 weeks and then re-laid off. And so I'll ask that person, if that is happening to them, then put in a complaint to the Labor Relations Office so that we can have a conversation with employer, because that should not be happening.
Okay. Is it too late to apply for unemployment benefits? My father is a taxi driver, and he thought he had enough in his savings to make it till the cruise ships returned.
Yes. The deadline for new applicants for the unemployment benefit has passed, but we will be rolling out reforms that provide people with future benefit outside of the unemployment benefit. And so stay tuned for further announcements regarding the reforms that we'll be moving forward with.
Okay. Next question is, although employers are not allowed to take away sick vacation days, are they allowed to prorate the amount of the year?
No, because you would have been still registered as a worker, and so there's not prorated for work performed. It's actually based on your employment. And so no, there should be no proration of benefits based on the COVID period.
They're asking, are permits granted to restricted categories if employers are unable to find suitable candidates?
Yes.
So next question, why does one need to be working in order to qualify to live independently in an apartment?
I don't understand that question. So It's my understanding that the two are not interlinked. The ability to rent an apartment and being on a work permit.
Okay. Can one person apply for financial assistance independently of others living in the same household?
And so under the current process, every application is centered on its own merit, and at some point, and sometimes the full household income is taken into consideration, but it all depends on the situation and the relationships within the household. I would tell you that the reform that we're planning to move forward with would provide persons with greater access to assistance if they actually need it, and if they have dependent children that need the necessary support. Obviously, we need to also look to better supporting those persons who are disabled, and we know that there are a range of disabilities that could prevent one from entering the workplace, but part of that is also us providing social support so that we can get some disabled persons in certain workplaces, and that's us forging relationships with employers to see if they can take on some of our disabled population regarding them just remaining on financial assistance because there's accessibility issues. And our seniors population will continue to ensure that we look out for our seniors moving forward. And so we're trying to really, in terms of FA, move from just financial assistance to more of social investment so that we're filling some of these social gaps and we're providing some of that social protection. And so that persons are not really reliant on FA to survive, but we equip people with the skill sets so that they can be functioning members, functioning economically in our economy.
Okay. This person says that there are some independent contractors and freelance self-employed that fall outside of the unemployment benefits. Would there be consideration for this sector going forward?
Correct. Yes, there was. Every single person who is unemployed is not receiving income, their situation will be assessed, and we will determine the level of support we provide that individual. The Premier said it on TV, and I echo that. We will not let people starve in Bermuda. We have to find a way in which we can better share the current pie that we have, because there is not unlimited funds. It's not lost on me the economic or fiscal stress that the government is faced with. We're asking things of that nature to take concessions, and so we should be mindful of that government finances are under real strain. We've never had a period where we've had no air visitors or cruise ship visitors in the country. In the height of our cruise ship and our tourist season, I should say, hotels are talking about survival now. When a year ago, if they had a crystal ball and looked forward, they'd be talking about flourishing. And we was looking to expand our tourism product, and we've seen now major contractions. And we heard that a number of our hotel establishments will not be opening up for the rest of the year, and so that's long-term unemployment. The problem we're currently faced with is there is no alternative industry to take 1,000 laid-off hotel workers and train them in another industry. And so we have to provide those workers with support. What that looks like, we're still working through that because of our financial constraints, but it may look like taking the current sum of money we have and better dividing it amongst those that need the support.
This person says, I know that the COVID-19 unemployment benefit scheme is for people who works 15 hours a week or more prior to the impact of the pandemic. Can you please tell me if there are any benefits or support for people who work fewer hours than that and have been similarly affected by layoffs, termination of employment, etc.?
And so in FA, they have a category called low income earner. So if one person is not working 15 hours a week, they actually have what would be qualified as low wages, and they qualify for FA. They can receive a benefit for supplementary income under FA.
Okay. This one asks, why does one need to be working in order to qualify to live independently in an apartment? Actually, I believe you already answered that one. It's been okay. So how long does it take to be approved for an award, assuming one is eligible?
Which award? If you're talking about the unemployment benefit, again, we're not receiving any new applicants for the unemployment benefit. As if we're talking about FA, then that's a whole nother process, and so I need to be clear on what process they're actually referring to, so I can provide an appropriate answer.
Okay. Yeah, there's nothing further on that one. So the next question: why do I need a doctor's certificate if I am healthy?
That question needs to be in context, and so if it is, let me just. And so it all depends on the context in that question, but certain you will for certificate for assessment to determine if what are your healthcare needs in some sort of circumstances where we're trying to provide benefits. And so if they're talking about from a benefits perspective, I think that's reasonable to request, so we can do a proper assessment of an individual. But if we're talking about from a jobs perspective, I don't think that would be required for persons who are currently in our economy.
Okay. This person says that we've been advised to appeal to the minister for permission to seek and reside due to under 2 years. Would you be able to advise us as to how long the processing time for this might take?
Seeking reside, they are not normally a long-term process, and so as soon as they get their query into the Department of Immigration, is a couple of weeks turnaround. And because we recognize that one can be pending within our society for long periods of time, so those applications are processed fairly quickly.
Okay. This person is asking, a Bermuda status person who received their status from a Bermuda spouse now wants to grant status to their new spouse. Is this allowed? And if so, why?
Once an individual has status, then they're deemed to be Bermudian. And so whatever benefits that the Act provides for persons with Bermuda status, it doesn't discriminate as to how you receive or obtain that status.
Okay. The next question is, if a client falls in arrears for any expenses, such as rent, Belco, credit association, will the department provide a financial award to assist with the debt owing?
So we're talking about persons who are trying to receive a benefit but have previous debt. No, the department will not be responsible for your previous debt, but what we will do is try to ensure that you don't go further into a hole and help you build yourself out of that particular hole, that debt hole that you're actually in.
Okay, this is a question which I think many people in this circumstance probably ask, right? Can I travel while being a recipient of financial assistance?
No, there's currently a restriction in terms of travel, but you can write to the director for specific approval. And so if persons are traveling without the approval of the director, they are liable for can subject themselves to a penalty. But if you're unclear on doing something and you're a recipient of FA, the easiest thing is to write in and ask the question first. Don't act first, and then you're penalized. Because what we don't want to see is that then you're removed from a benefit that you require for a 1, 2, or 3 month period.
Okay. Next question is, prior to the cabinet reshuffle, much work was being done in the area of immigration reform. Can you confirm that work continues in this area and what the current status is?
Okay, so I can definitely confirm that all the process improvement work that had begun under the previous minister will continue under my administration. I can also confirm that the comprehensive immigration reform initiatives that were underway are currently undertaken. And then I can also say that attention has been given to immigration to discuss how we can streamline the processing of applications, and also additional resources has been given to take into consideration the Bermuda First recommendations regarding having more rapid work permit application processes to foster business growth. And I said earlier in this broadcast that what we're actually going to do is conduct a pilot program to see how best it can better serve our business community while also promoting Bermudian employment. And that's what we want to see. If you're asking the Department of Immigration to move to alternative strategies regarding processes of work permits and making some process more automatic, there has to be some trade-off, and the trade-off will be the expansion of Bermudians in your business. And so if you can demonstrate that you're finding Bermudian job opportunities or promoting persons within your company, then certainly a conversation can be had.
Okay. So this is another interesting question. So what would you tell someone who believes that, all expats should leave the country and have everyone Bermudian be working in Bermuda?
That's unfortunate to think that all expats should just leave Bermuda. I don't share that notion. When we look at it, we have 37,000 jobs in our labor market, in our labor force, and we don't have 37,000 Bermudian employees. We have a lot of specialized services that are required in our economy, and as a result, there is a demand for labor that doesn't exist within our local population. And so I support guest workers, and what we're actually trying to do is expand the number of jobs in the economy, and that's Bermudian jobs and jobs of guest workers. I think we all should be clear that the more people working in Bermuda leads to a better Bermuda. When we see contraction in large amount of job levels, we see our economy contract with those jobs. And so if Bermudians want access to job opportunities, it's best that we actually grow our economy and expand the amount of jobs, because those jobs have a reduced and indirect impact in our economy. Persons shop in our retail establishments, they eat from our grocery stores, they pay rent, and so there's a number of benefits that come from having expatriate population or guest worker population with disposable income that can actually benefit our community.
Okay. This next question is, if a woman got her PRC from her spouse, can her sister then get her PSC from her if she meets all the other qualifications?
No, I don't think PRCs are not transferred like that. And the only way new persons can receive PRCs at this point is through the Job Makers Act. And so once you've been exempt under the Job Makers Act for, I think, a period of 10 years, then you can apply to become a PRC.
Okay. This question is, and I think you touched on that already, but I believe it probably bears repeating, right? Can you confirm the process of filing a complaint for breaches against the Bermuda Immigration Act and related policies?
So if there's breaches for the in the terms of immigration, there is a tip line at 296-5202, or you can go to the Department of Immigration and they have a investigation portal and you can submit your complaint, or you can email immigrationcomplaints@gov.bm.
Okay. Just like to reiterate and thank the members of the public for submitting their questions. Very good job, I must say. Another one here. There are segments in our workforce that employ non-Bermudians, excluding spouse. How do we track the establishment and ensure that Bermudians are given the opportunity to work in areas such as construction, cleaning services, etc.?
So there is no doubt in my mind that there are some discriminatory practices taking place. I encourage Bermudians to apply for those jobs so that when the board or the minister is applying on work permit applications, he has, they or myself has something to cross-reference the application with. What we are going to move for is a more proactive approach where we see large volumes of work permits in certain job categories. What we're actually going to do is target those job categories with aggressive training, where training can be hit. And so what we will see is a transfer of labor into some of the occupational categories. But we also heard from employers the other side of the coin, and we, as Bermudians, as a collective, we also have to do a better job. You have some cases where people get opportunities but remain in a job less than a month, or don't show up to work, or get paid and then don't return back to work. Those are some of the things we have to work on. But like I said, I do accept that there are some discriminations. The Department of Workforce Development will be a bit more proactive in those job categories that are heavily populated with guest workers, but we have to pull up our socks as Bermudians and work on our employability skills. We can get you in the door, but part of your responsibility is remaining in that door. And so we all have a role to play, and I accept my role as the Minister of Labor, the role I have to play.
Okay, this person is asking, first they're just accepting the fact that we've always had expats working in Bermuda, but they are pointing out on occasion there are expats with criminal records that are allowed to enter, reside, and work in Bermuda. What is being done going forward to ensure these type of persons are not allowed into our country?
And so we don't ban people with criminal records. We do ask with the work permit that they have some sort of police report, and you have to assess what actually the actual crime was and the risk and the harm that will place on our population. Where there are persons who are asked to reside and seek, and they engage in criminal activity once they're in Bermuda, then we have rights to deport those individuals who are dependents. And in terms of work permit, if you're not operating in a manner that is in the best interest of the country, then your work permit comes up for consideration. Those type of things will be factored in. But we can only act on what we know, and we try to remain as informed as possible so that we can make decisions that are in the best interest of the country.
Okay. So this person says that they have not received their last Friday's benefit payment, but they have friends that have received theirs. So when will the next unemployment benefit be paid?
So the I can inform that there was a problem with the payments last Friday. Um, for those persons who have HSBC accounts, they should have been paid because that is the on Friday, and so that is the transfer bank. But for those that have accounts in different banks, you should receive your payment um, today or tomorrow at the latest.
Okay. This person is asking for you to define specialized workers. Do we assume it's just the normal course of doing business? Where is the succession planning?
So, when I say a worker with specialized skill sets, you know that we do have our international business sector with very highly technical jobs. We don't have the level of actuaries and things of that nature within our economy. So that's when we talk about specialized. I don't just use specialized flippantly. I use specialized where there's a demand for, and then there's always been an inability to fulfill those jobs with local employees. We will be having an aggressive workforce development strategy. We will be rolling out career paths so that people understand where opportunities are in the pathway to get to those job fields and the support that the government will provide along the way. We haven't done a good job at doing that. And so our students are not 100% aware of where the demand for skill sets lie. But just off the top of my head, jobs within the healthcare profession generally are highly populated with number medians. You have accountants who are generally heavily populated with number medians. You have underwriters and actuaries, actually, heavily populated with number medians. There are a number of trade jobs that we have moved away from decades, where we used to heavily populate those areas that we no longer do. All of these present opportunity, and all of these will be part of our strategy moving forward. Workforce development will focus on healthcare professions. We had a report that showed expansion in hospitality. That's now blew up in our face with no tourists in the country, but that's where part of our focus will be, getting people back into hospitality jobs. But where our focus also should remain, because we will rebound from the current space that we're in. But we know that there is a demand for labor and skill sets in this country. We will ensure that we be proactive in terms of putting training programs and awareness about those occupations in place so that people can make informed decisions. We still have kids going away, and I wouldn't just say kids, but individuals within our society going away and getting degrees and coming back, and the degree that they possess is not in demand in our economy, or it's not in alignment with the skill sets that are needed to get them with the vast, in alignment with the vast amount of job opportunities that exist within our economy. And so we have to have some of these conversations, and I accept that as part of my responsibility. And so that is part of the vision of the ministry, to ensure that persons are informed and to ensure that we facilitate the expansion of jobs. And we can't do it absence of involving the people who we would like to see in our workforce.
Okay. Now, Minister, you recall that there has been an ongoing issue with some Bermudians, not even Bermudians, but just residents that have Bermudian passports. And when they travel, there's some issue at certain ports of entry regarding certain passport codes fixed. What is the status of those codes being fixed for these passports?
And so what I'll say is we're still actively working to find a resolution. This is an extremely difficult one. It's something that multiple ministers have been faced with. So I can't provide a definitive answer, but once I get an update, I can commit to providing a press statement which would inform individuals as in terms of the track that we will be moving forward with regarding those passports.
Okay, next question. If a work permit has been refused, can an employer submit an appeal to the minister?
Correct. If a work permit has been refused, a appeal can be submitted.
Okay.
But I think as individuals can see that this ministry is deals with a lot of front-facing departments, and so financial assistance, workforce development, and immigration are all services that will currently be highly in demand. And so it's important for us not to do things the same way we've been doing them all this time. So our process improvement and our reform is ultimately aimed at creating a better environment that facilitates job growth, but also ensures that we're doing right by our people. And I said in an interview some time ago, like, if governments that are elected are not doing right by the people, they should not be in government. And so I'll ensure that while I'm here and I recognize that I don't have an infinite time in this, but I'm going to do all that I can to ensure that I'm doing right by the people of Bermuda.
Okay. When can persons affected by the passing of the bill, referring to the Bermuda Immigration Bill 2020, relating to mixed status families, submit application to the Department of Immigration?
And so I answered that already, but I'll repeat the answer. Regarding that, we were waiting so we can get an electronic system in place so that we don't have to process a lot of paper applications, which will stretch the processing time. And so we're looking at mid-August to have that operationalized.
Okay. Why are companies allowed to choose who they wish to contact or interview for a position that's advertised? I know several Bermudians who have applied for positions that are more than qualified for. However, neither of them have been contacted for an interview. In both positions, the same foreigners have been given another permit to continue with the same company.
So where a Bermudian feels like they're being hard done, discriminated against, then they should actually submit an appeal to the Ministry of the Department of Immigration. But we cannot force employers interview all employees. You can appreciate that some employees do not possess the minimum job requirements in order to qualify for an interview. But when the board or the minister is applying on work permits and we see that there are suitably qualified Bermudians who have applied, we do ask the company for rationale on each and every one of those applications as to why they wasn't given an opportunity to fill the vacant post. We also ask employers to go back out and have interview or re-advertise if we feel that they haven't done their due diligence.
Okay. With the Departments of Immigration, Labor, and Workforce Development being under one ministry, what synergies can be expected to come from this new structure?
And so that's the beauty of the mix. We're able, in terms of from a workforce development standpoint, to see the skill sets that are required from a work point of view. We're able to determine where there is actually job demand, and we're able to now use our workforce development lever to prepare persons for occupation, prepare themselves to take on jobs in those categories. We also know that if we have a batch of people in workforce development that are suitably qualified, then we will take that into consideration when we adjudicating immigration or work permit matters. And what we can do is ensure that those Bermudians who are suitably qualified get a fair share or fair opportunity prior to us granting a work permit.
Okay.
And I should say fair consideration.
So this person is asking, what do you think regarding Bermudians being made redundant whilst their jobs are being done by other employees who are on existing permits?
And so the premise of making a job redundant is because a company should no longer need that skill set done within the shop. And so it's unfortunate that employers in this time will make millions redundant and then utilize work permit holders to do that job of a Bermudian. It should not be taking place, and that wouldn't be a true redundancy if somebody else is taking on those responsibilities where the company is not getting rid of those responsibilities out of their shop. And so I think every time somebody has a question or query or whether or not what their employer is doing right or wrong, I ask them just to reach out to the labor relations section and go through with an officer to see whether or not what their employer done is above board or below board. But some things may be above board, but I will find to be morally wrong. And so that means that we would have to improve our protections by strengthening the legislation moving forward.
For someone seeking employment that doesn't have a college or university education, what would you suggest they train in or try to get skills in to help them find employment going forward?
Ask me that question in January, I would have had a different answer than I have now. And so with the high number of unemployment in our society and the contraction of jobs in our economy, is very difficult. But what I would say is the Department of Workforce Development is doing a full assessment of where the opportunity lies, and we will roll out a full promotional campaign so that every person in this country is clearly informed of where job opportunity lies moving forward and what skill sets they need. And that's part of us rolling out what we consider to be career pathways, helping people understand exactly the question that was answered, was asked. Based on their skill sets, where does opportunity exist?
Is there anything that you can maybe advise probably a company that is trying to train an employee?
If companies are looking to train employees and they are struggling with funding, we would ask for them to engage in some sort of partnership with workforce development. And so that's what part of workforce development is there to work as partners with employers. And so we're not asking employers to take on employees or interns or apprenticeships in isolations. And we have an apprenticeship program, apprenticeship legislation, and we don't see the uptick in terms of employers utilizing that avenue to actually train and promote young Bermudians to enter in certain job categories. And what I'll actually do is encourage persons to have that conversation with workforce development in terms of apprenticeship or intern opportunities, and see what resources that the Department of Workforce Development has to partner with that employer. Where there are greater training needs, certainly that's what we actually want to do. We actually want to form meaningful partnerships with industry. I know that the Construction Association has presented a proposal for how we get more masons into the industry. I know that the hotels and restaurants prior to COVID worked on a scheme which afforded a number of Bermudians opportunities in that particular industry. And so it's about us now continuing to build relationships with industry so that we have training programs that actually bring the fruit that we require. It makes sense us having these large job fairs or us putting on training initiatives at the end of the training initiatives that bears no fruit in terms of persons entering into the world of work. And so where we should be expending our resources is on initiatives that are in alignment with industry that have direct pathways to jobs. And that's where our focus will be regarding training and development. We also want to utilize Bermuda College even more, and so that they really play a greater role in training and development as well. And so the traditional role of community colleges in societies is that community college plays that role of on-demand services that actually caters to the needs of industry. And we need to have a more agile approach to training and development so that when industry says that there's demand for certain skill sets, we can put on those training initiatives in short order and get persons skilled up and into those jobs. But I say a lot of things about people need skills and people need development, but that's not always the case. It's just sometimes people need opportunity and they're not given the appropriate chance. And so I think building the relationships would have those direct one-on-one conversations, which would allow us to be better agents for changing the paradigm regarding Bermudian employees or those employees that they wouldn't necessarily give opportunity to.
Okay. Another question is, there are many people that would say that a Bermudian would never be a pot washer or, something that's considered a menial job. But if given the opportunity, how would you advise someone who at least gets the foot in the job as a pot washer of maybe what the future can hold them?
Let me just say this: all jobs are dignified from my lands, and so whether it's a pot washer, it doesn't matter as long as persons are gainfully employed, contributing to our economy and have some level of self-sustainability. I'll support those persons in those endeavors. Bermudians will take on jobs. This blanket painting of the brush that all Bermudians are this or that or they won't do this or they won't do that, that's incorrect. And as we see our economic times get tougher, also even as Bermudians have to transition our mind frame in terms of jobs that we wouldn't have previously done in the past and transition into these are jobs that I now have to do to put food in my mouth or food in my family's mouth based on our current climate. We're not always going to be in this economic slump. We've got some rough times we're going to face moving forward. And so, yeah, it requires all of us to have a paradigm shift. It requires the employee to have a paradigm shift and also the employer to have a paradigm shift.
Okay. Just like to reiterate to the listening public, thank you again for submitting your questions. These have been great, very enjoyable. Another question, is there any message, Minister, that you would like to relay to the public to make the work of your ministry and teams easier or more, more fruitful?
I know I have the ministry has a difficult job moving forward. The economy, we are in for a rough ride, but you just know that ministry is looking out for best interest, and me in particular as the minister, I will ensure that we're putting the things in place that actually help our people to succeed in this economy. As a union leader, I always find myself on the side of advocating for things, and now I'm in a position where I have the opportunity to implement. So I'm not going to waste this opportunity to implement some of the things I know that would improve the lives of people within this country. And so I'll put my best foot forward. I know things are times are going to get rough, and there may be a level of impatience that grows within our society. And I already see the and hear the frustration as I walk the streets. People saying I'm out of work and so person's working and things of that nature. But just know that for that individual who's out of work and sees their a guest worker working, that we are actively going to put things in place that get you back employed. And if you don't get employed in a timely manner, we'll ensure that we provide you with the necessary social support while we, like I said, try to build back the economy to what was and beyond. Because we want to, when we look into the future, we're not always going to be in this predicament that we're currently in, but right now we have to weather that storm.
Is there anything you can share about maybe some improvements that will be made to the Bermuda Job Board?
And so when we reform workforce development, we're looking at all the services they provide. The workforce development needs to provide more upfront advisement services. So a person should be able to click on a link, click on accountant, and see the pathway to becoming an accountant and the interventions that government provides that can assist them with becoming an accountant. The same way you click on nurse, mason, you should be able to click on doctor, you should be able to click on chef, and it lays out the pathway that you need to take in order to get there. The other thing is, I think that the job board could be better utilized. We have what I consider to be abuse of the job board. So somebody who is not qualified for certain jobs just applies to all the jobs on the job board, and that compromises the integrity of our process moving forward. Because even when persons are looking for work permit, they have to sort through all these applications where persons do not have the skill set. So there could be better screening and alignment, but also we can be more proactive. And knowing that somebody applied for a job, may have had the skill sets, but was not successful. When another job avails itself, then there should be some communication with that person to inform them that another opportunity may exist. We have to find out how we were better able to do that, but being more proactive rather than reactive is actually where we're aiming to go.
Okay, Minister. There have been some stories circulated every now and then where you have a Bermudian that's returned with a university degree, but yet they can't find a job. Mm-hmm. And there's expats in that same role that this person is qualified for. What assurances can you give Bermudians, residents that are away in university, looking to come back home to find employment, that when they do come, they will be able to find some success in that endeavor?
The experience barrier that we've created in this country actually hurts me. So for almost any job in our economy, you need 3, 4, 5 years experience. At what point in time do we give people opportunity and prove that they have the skill sets to do the job? You have very capable and qualified persons who come back, and there's barriers. And so as much as possible, if how we remove that experience barrier is through direct penetration of internships and things of that nature, and we want to increase that. For a young person coming back to Bermuda with a degree and looking for opportunity, in this current climate, for me to be realistic, it will be difficult for that person to find a job. But what I'll continue to do is encourage people to apply for jobs while we work with employers to get persons greater access to opportunity. And so this is where I started with part of companies looking for expedited work permits and things of that nature that would enhance their business. We're saying if you're doing that, well, you need to ensure that you provide opportunity for persons who want to have jobs within your establishment. And so there has to be trade-offs. Increase the amount of Bermudians in your shop, provide Bermudians with better promotional opportunities, and then we can have some talk regarding trade-offs in when it comes to work permits. But um, we won't be considering employers who haven't demonstrated the ability to promote the Bermudanization of their shop.
Okay. So this person is asking if a company has a work permit holder and that individual's permit is set to expire in, say, November, and there is a suitable Bermudian that can fill that role, can they terminate this work permit holder now and hire the Bermudian? What is the labor law for this?
So what the work permit holder should be able to work to the end of up to the permit expires. That was the arrangement that was made. And you also have to take in consideration people pack up their affairs, move to Bermuda, and if you tell somebody that you're granted a three-year work permit, they should be at least able to work to the end of that until that permit expires. I think what we have to take into consideration moving forward is that we must be fair and must be balanced. And just like Bermudians are humans, gas workers are humans as well. And so we shouldn't. We need to strike a balance. I will always advocate for the promotion of Bermudians within our workforce, but that doesn't mean I have to be draconian to our gas workers.
Okay, just want to reiterate, we have a few minutes left here. So if anyone out there is listening, they have a question, they're interested to get an answer for it, now is the perfect opportunity. Just send your message again through Facebook, and we will respond as soon as it's received. So, Minister, do we have a minimum wage? It seems that foreigners are doing what you are called menial jobs, but at a very small wage.
And I think that once we do have a minimum wage, it will provide better incentives for Bermudians to work in certain job categories. We don't have a minimum wage. As you know, that legislation was actually passed. We have a wage commission. That wage commission is going to work. Once the wage commission finishes doing its work, it will provide a report to myself as the minister. I'll opine on that report and then provide the country with a minimum wage rate that I deem to be appropriate. And so that is something that we are currently actively working on, having a minimum wage in place. The only occupation I think that has a minimum wage according to our work permit policy is domestic workers, and that's at $10 an hour.
So this person is, it is the role of your ministry to incentivize employers to hire and promote Bermudians. What incentives are currently in place to do so?
And so we have tax exemptions for those that are actually demonstrate new hires. Like I said, the Bermuda First had put recommendations in place regarding changes to our work permit policy for international companies. And what we're saying is, if you want to see changes to the policy, what you need to do is promote Bermudanization. As I've met with the Chamber of Commerce, as I met with the international business, as I've met with the hotel industry, all my dialogue has been centered around how we get better penetration of Bermudians in those particular industries. And employers, where they're currently now asking for some of the level of concession, we will be asking them to expand their the number of jobs for Bermudians when they reopen. So we're actively promoting, asking or requesting from companies that they look into promoting Bermudian employment, and we will use that we have within the ministry to try to accomplish that aim. It's not easy, but like I said, we're going to be more proactive regarding our approach to getting Bermudians back into the workforce. And back into the workforce, but promoted throughout the workforce, because there are also glass ceilings that exist.
Okay, this person is just asking, you've been in the seat as Minister of Labor for a few weeks now. What has been your experience thus far?
My experience is that this is a very important and significant role, and a lot of people's lives depend on decisions I make or don't make. And so when I look at it, and I'll just walk you through the gambit, when I look at it from immigration is a very sensitive issue for this particular country, and I have to ensure that I'm striking the right balance, but I also have to ensure that protecting the interests of Bermudians while I'm striking that balance. When I look at workforce development, I don't think we've done enough in terms of workforce development for our people, and this is why we're moving forward with implementing the National Workforce Development Plan. So we have a better workforce development system that connects people with jobs. When I look at financial assistance, I don't think we've done a good enough job with transitioning people off of financial assistance. And so part of what we're trying to do is ensure that social workers and caseworkers are doing more on the front end to get people back in a place of self-sustainability. And in terms of labor relations, I don't think we've done a good enough job in terms of holding employers accountable. And so you see the changes to the Employment Act gives the manager of labor relations more teeth for civil penalties where there are, infringements to the Employment Act, and the tribunal more teeth to put civil penalties on employers that are not doing the right thing according to the workers. And so I recognize that we have some improvement to make, and it is my responsibility that we close those gaps in terms of the improvements, because at the end of the day, our people depend on us doing the right thing. And it's not lost on me. I've been in this job, like you said, for just over 3 weeks, but the volume of emails I've received from people who need assistance is very, very humbling, but it lets me know that it's a lot of work that we need to do. And I'm committed to doing that work, and I will not squander this opportunity in this position and just sit here idle. I plan to work for the people of Bermuda during my duration in this post.
Okay. Just for the listeners out there and those that may want to contact the minister directly, his email address was just posted to the chat, so you can go there to reference the email, and the minister will move your queries directly to his email address. Minister, anything further you think you would want to share with the people, the audience that are here right now listening to this conversation?
It's a new Ministry of Labor and a new direction, and what I will just ask persons is to stay for the rollout of further initiatives that I know many Bermudians are looking forward for. But also to companies out there, the ministry is open to work with to creation of jobs within our economy. And so while I service the Bermuda population, I'm also here to facilitate economic growth as well. And so it's not lost on me the opportunities that we can have. We're all pulling in the same direction.
Okay. So last, and I think time is just about up. But if you had a crystal ball, how would you predict the present circumstances, the financial challenges, the employment challenges? How long would you predict that we would be in this situation before we start to see true signs of improvement?
It's going to get worse for another year and a half before things really get better. And so 2022 will be the earliest sign of some sort of economic recovery.
All right, Minister, I'd like to thank you for participating in this Facebook Live. I'm sure the audience have very much appreciated your commentary, your answering their questions. Thank you, audience, for tuning in to this Facebook Live session, and we look forward to seeing you at the next one.
Thank you, and thank you for Bermuda for your questions. I hope I've done an appropriate job of answering them. And again, if you have specific matters that you want to address, please email me directly. Have a good night, Bermuda.